Hi everyone, my name is Michael, and today on Michael on the Mic, where we talk everything fashion to better your understanding of the industry. Today we're going to be talking about LVMH and how they became the conglomerate that they are today. Now, before we get started, I do just want to preface that I'll be saying a lot of Italian and French brand names. I do not speak these languages, and I'm trying my best to pronunciate them. So it all started back in 1984 when basically Christian Dior, the brand, went on sale because of their parent company at the time went bankrupt. When the company went bankrupt, the French government was actually trying to find a buyer for them because Christian Dior was such a big name and important figure to French history that they wanted to help find a buyer to make sure that Christian Dior's name lived on. However, it was not on sale for long because Bernard Arnault, who is now the richest man in the world as of 2021, bought it for 15 million euros. And I know what you're thinking, that is a ton of money to start off with to become the biggest conglomerate ever. However, what he started out with, the 15 million, and what he's turned it into today is only a fraction of what it is now. So in today's video, I'm going to be giving you guys a timeline and going through every single brand that they bought over the years and how they became the conglomerate that they are today from 1984 to 2021. Before we get started, I do just want to point out that I'm not going to be going through every single brand that they own. Like I said, they own 70 of them, so that video would be very long. But I do just want to say that I'm going to be going through all of the major ones that you know, and also the ones that they own majority stake in. They do own a lot of brands that are just minor stakes, so only a few percentages of equity. Something to consider is that LVMH is not just a luxury fashion conglomerate, they're actually just a luxury conglomerate. So they own lots of other brands rather than the most well-known ones like Louis Vuitton, Christian Dior, Emilio Pucci, Berletti, and so many more. They own champagne company, watches, skincare, and so much, but they're all luxury companies. So in 1984, they got Christian Dior, and in 1987, only 3 years later, they acquired Louis Vuitton and Moet Hennessy. This is when they decided to go with the name LVMH to make sure that they're incorporating all their luxury sectors. At the time, it was just fashion retailers and wines and spirits. In that same year, they also acquired Dom Perignon, Moet et Chandon, and Hennessy, the spirit company. Then, 1 year later, in 1988, they acquired Givenchy, which was very big at the time because they were still well known for dressing Audrey Hepburn in the little black dress. In 1993, they acquired Berletti, which was the very well-known men's shoe designer, and then also they acquired Kenzo for 80 million US dollars. Moving into the fragrances, in 1994, they acquired Guerlain, the very well-known French fragrance company. In 1996, they acquired Celine for 540 million US dollars, and then they also shortly after acquired Loewe. In 1997, they acquired companies in the US for the first time. They acquired Marc Jacobs, which was at the time the creative director of Louis Vuitton. They also acquired Sephora in 1997, which not many people know about, that Sephora is actually originally a French cosmetics brand, and LVMH was kind of the reasoning of why they expanded to such a global market. They then expanded into the UK market, buying out Thomas Pink. In 1999, LVMH also bought out 50.1% of Tag Heuer, which is a really common thing in business terms. If you own 50.1% of a company, you own majority stake, which means that you basically have overall control of it. They bought it for 730 million US dollars. Also in 1999, LVMH bought 5% stake in Gucci Group, and I know what you're thinking. First of all, what's Gucci Group? Gucci Group is basically now known as Kering. It's the parent company that owned Gucci. And also, LVMH doesn't own Gucci. And this is because they only bought 5%. Shortly after, they bumped that up to 34.4%. And they did it only for a financial aspect. They did not want to change anything about Gucci or have any control over Gucci. Shortly after, Kering wanted to buy back all of its stake from LVMH, and they bought it back for 804 million USD. Once we hit the centennial in year 2000, LVMH bought Emilio Pucci. Now, for the longest time, actually for the past 2 decades, LVMH only owned 1/3 of Emily Pucci. It wasn't until this past June 2021 when LVMH officially bought out Emily Pucci entirely from the Pucci family. Shortly after Emily Pucci, they bought Razi Moda, which is a very well-known French designer. In 2001, LVMH decided to go into real estate. They bought Les Méritants, which is basically a very large department store in Paris and very well known for tourists. They bought 50.1% of the stake for 256 million euros. In 2010, they decided to buy the whole thing out and now own 100% of it. After Les Méritants, there was actually a pretty big debate in the fashion industry. At one point, Fendi itself, Prada, and LVMH all owned Fendi's brand, and they all owned equal amounts, so no one really had control over the market. However, it wasn't until a year later in 2002 when Fendi was the 49% stakeholder, and LVMH bought out Prada's remaining stake and became 51%. So LVMH now is currently majority stakeholder at Fendi. LVMH then bought DKNY, which at the time was very well known. As you may know now, they're not as well known. They sold it recently in 2016 to an apparel company for $650 million US. And then LVMH actually did something pretty sneaky. They bought only 5% of shares in Hermes, which Hermes and the LVMH company do not get along. It's been very well known that they are very hard competitors, and it was actually behind Hermes's back. They bought it without them knowing, which only lasted for a little bit, and right now LVMH and Hermes have no mergers or acquisitions together. After 2002, LVMH took a really long break, about 8 years from acquiring new brands, and this is because I personally think that they took these 8 years to really revamp and perfect all these brands to make sure that they're profitable. They just spent literally billions on acquiring about 30 brands at this point and had nothing really changed about them. They used these 8 years to revamp them and make them profitable. In 2010, they started back on acquiring new brands, and they acquired Mona, which started similar to how Louis Vuitton started. It was a trunk making company. However, they expanded to a much larger product range. 1 year later, in 2011, the Bulgari family sold the complete ownership of their company to LVMH. However, they did it smart because they only asked for $6 billion, which I know is a lot of money, but compared to the size of Bulgaria, it's really not. And they wanted 3% stake in the LVMH company itself, which is the smartest thing to do because that is much more profitable and passive income compared to running the Bulgari brand. Then in 2013, Loro Piana was acquired by LVMH for around 2 billion euros. Also, side note, Loro Piana is definitely coming back. I feel like more and more people are talking about the brand and overall loving those like timeless, pretty expensive, but quality over quantity pieces. In 2013 as well, Jonathan Anderson was a creative director of Loewe. At the same time, J.W. Anderson, which is Jonathan Anderson's brand, was acquired by LVMH. I personally think it was in the paperwork somewhere that if Jonathan Anderson became the creative director of Loewe, that he was going to sell part of his brand to LVMH. In 2016, LVMH bought Rimowa, which is the luggage company very well known for their Supreme collaboration and their Christian Dior collaboration recently. 2019, they bought Fenty, which was very highly anticipated. People really wanted to see what Rihanna was going to do at Fenty, especially with LVMH. They thought it was a really good backing. However, LVMH decided to close down Fenty and it went bankrupt. Also in 2019, Stella McCartney left Kering and became a joint venture with LVMH, which is Kering's very well-known competitor. The thing about a joint venture is that we don't really get to know a lot of information and like how much things were bought for and who's a majority stakeholder. However, we later did find out that Stella McCartney is a majority stakeholder of her eponymous brand, Stella McCartney. In 2020, LVMH bought majority stake in Tiffany & Co., which people really were debating on if it was a good decision or not. People thought that LVMH was just trying to become the financial monopoly in the fashion industry, which isn't entirely incorrect. However, it was shown that in their latest collection with Beyonce and Jay-Z that they really were working hard to revamp Tiffany, and people loved it. We're almost done, but in 2021, LVMH announced that they were going to do an eponymous brand with Phoebe Philo, who is a very well-known designer in the fashion industry, but was on a hiatus for a long time. She came back and is now working with LVMH. Last but not least, 2021 also, Off-White was acquired by LVMH, which is similar to the Marc Jacobs back in 2000 because Virgil Abloh, who is the founder of Off-White, is now the creative director of menswear at Louis Vuitton, and now he has sold his brand to LVMH. So it's kind of a similar story with Marc Jacobs back in 2000 and Virgil in 2021. Now, those are all the brands I'm going to be talking about today that LVMH have acquired over the past almost 4 decades of being around. They are definitely a huge conglomerate and super successful in the industry, and it's now worth like $1 billion company, probably multi-billion. But that's all I have for you guys this week. My name is Michael. This is Michael on the Mic. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys in 2 weeks with the new episode.